Well, John Milton was an English poet and an intellectual. He wrote in the 17th century at a time of political upheaval. In his poem Lycidas, he makes the point, and I quote, "The hungry sheep look up and are not fed, but swollen with wind and the rank mist they draw, rot inwardly, and foul contagions spread." I suspect that several centuries on, the hungry sheep are the disillusioned voters. They're not fed with the leadership they deserve, but what's worse, they're punished with dreadful leadership at a political and corporate level. Rot inwardly? I hope not. But what is the contagion? Well, it's there for all to see. Toe the line or you're in trouble. Today, the contagion spreads. Newcastle in New South Wales has the world's largest coal export port. The ANZ Bank are now refusing to keep funding the facility under its climate change policy, banning loans to the coal sector. And we're told that this is a test case of the new anti-coal and net zero emission policies of the big four banks. I'll look at this net zero emission policy farce later in tonight's program. Don't worry, if the Port of Newcastle falls over and can't get funding, the very economy of the Hunter Valley will be on the ropes. The ANZ Bank admit this is part of the bank's environmental, social and governance strategy. Don't worry about jobs, don't worry about the regions. But typically, the ANZ are saying they won't publicly discuss specific details. Some rubbish from the ANZ CEO, Shane Elliott, that they won't deal with business customers, quote, if we don't see an alignment of values, unquote. What values is this bloke's talking about? The issue is coal, which produces carbon dioxide, which I might add is 0.04% of the atmosphere. The Shane Elliott's of this world wouldn't know that. And of the Earth's total production of carbon dioxide, human beings produce 3%. That's the world. Well, they want to abandon the coal industry. What about the farmer? What bank will look after him? He sends his kids to boarding school. He needs a tractor, a harvester, a bank. But he runs a herd of about 300 cows. Every cow emits about 2,300 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent gases a year. Will this Shane Elliott, in his economic lunacy, tell us what he's going to do with the farmer? It's not just the ANZ Bank. Woolworths is talking about net zero carbon dioxide emissions by 2050. Remember Bjorn Lomborg last week, who told us on this program policies like the Paris Agreement will fix little at a high cost, and that, quote, Biden's climate alarmism is almost entirely wrong, unquote. Bunnings, the nation's leading hardware store chain, has vowed to source 100% of its power from renewables by 2025. These people don't know what they're talking about. And this bloke Elliott from the ANZ Bank, who couldn't lead a horse to water, thinks he'll grow a hair or two on his chest with this net zero emissions policy. Ignorance writ large. Let's judge Elliott on what he's meant to be good at, looking after our money. Well, while Elliott was proving his ignorance about carbon dioxide last year, leading to his announcement now about the Port of Newcastle, the ANZ annual profit slumped 40%. Their cash profit fell by 42%. Well done, Mr. Elliott. And the profits are not going to improve under your leadership. There is no surprise about today's story concerning the Port of Newcastle. Elliott warned in October last year that the ANZ Bank would get rid of any customer with a dismissive approach to the climate challenge. And customers would be quizzed about their public commitment to a net zero economy. The height of him, imposing his ignorance on hard-working and defenceless Australians. I'm telling you, the Shane Elliott's of this world continue to confirm that not only poor businessmen, they couldn't conduct a sensible discussion on carbon dioxide if you gave them a start. I note today, Mr. Elliott, your bank is not prepared to publicly discuss these things. Mr. Elliott, there's an empty chair here. Why not pluck up some courage and answer a few tough questions and defend your economic and energy lunacy? Funny, isn't it? Newcastle services the Hunter Valley, the best thermal coal in the world. Asia has increased its demand for Australian thermal coal through the Port of Newcastle by 275 million tonnes a year. Increase. The exports, of course, bring in about 70 billion coal exports. And here we have our economy placed in jeopardy while government allows intellectual lightweights who are running some of our corporate entities to bully our productive sector. And this, as we're heading to $1 trillion of debt. China are building 220 coal-fired power stations, India 77, Indonesia 35, Vietnam 21, and the Philippines 21, all on our doorstep. Around the world, 35 nations have 467 coal-fired power stations under construction. As Bjorn Lomborg has said, We need to challenge the ever more rampant talk about catastrophic climate change. Of the Paris Agreement, Lomborg says it will be, quote, the most costly treaty in history. And one of the world's leading researchers, Czech-Canadian Václav Smil, has said, quote, the great hope for a quick and sweeping transition to renewable energy is wishful thinking, unquote. But Labor and Liberal fall into all of this with zero emissions nonsense. As John Milton wrote, the hungry sheep look up and are not fed. The absence of leadership for the majority of Australians does mean the contagion spreads. Decisions are being taken by boards and CEOs with no regard to shareholders whose money they're supposed to be responsibly managing. If people like Shane Elliott want to change public policy, become a politician, they might have to give up more than $1 million of unearned salary, but no, they'd rather bark dangerously from the sidelines. Mind you, is the world of politics any different? Wokeness and the cancel culture are alive there as well. If I were a shareholder or a customer of the ANZ Bank, I'd have serious concerns about putting the fate of my money in the hands of people like Shane Elliott. In time, the public, I have no doubt, will have their say. But it has become so serious, your say must be sooner rather than later. Email me, alan@skynews.com.au. Text me. The line was on fire last night, 0414 000 848. And tell your friends they can listen live on the iHeartRadio app. It is Tuesday, February 9.